So, warm welcome. Thank you as well on Instagram. Warm welcome to Soul Cafe. And again, different formats every time, every week. And today, since there's two of us, you can guess that it's an interview. And our focus is on focusing. Our focus is concentration. So, let's start with a reflection. Each of us has the capacity to focus, to concentrate. The question always is, what am I concentrating on? Is it relevant to where I would like to go, what I would like to experience? But let me just practice concentration, see what happens when I shift concentration. I begin with something that's very familiar to me, and probably each of us, focusing on the outer physical world. I observe my surroundings, my physical surroundings, the room in which I sit. I observe it all with utmost care. I look around the room, see the surroundings, perhaps see things I hadn't noticed before. Focusing on the physical realm, this comes easily to all of us. And then something that might be a little bit more effort, focusing on what is still physical, but subtle. So I focus on the breath of the body. Still physical, but a little more subtle, a little less obvious. Observing the lungs breathing. And now, even more subtle, and no longer physical, but still real, I observe or focus on the activity of my mind. Seeing if I can catch each thought that's moving through my own mind. And now I introduce choice or mastery, choosing to focus on a particular thought until it becomes a feeling, an experience. I bring into my mind the thought of peace. I am a being of peace. To hold that thought until I feel it, not just an idea, but an experience. Om Shanti. So there might have been a different quality of effort with each of those, just something to note for the self. So we'll hand it over to our interviewer, Nora, who will start the conversation.
Om Shanti, and welcome to those who've joined us on Instagram, YouTube, and Zoom. Just trying to stay concentrated while on all these three platforms. There's maybe an opportunity to experiment. So it was a very lovely practice of this very simple commentary And so the topic is about concentration. And in a very, I guess you can say, day-to-day level, for those who go to school, go to work, do you feel there's a difference in terms of this, the application of this word concentration versus in this particular study?
I actually feel that there can be crossover, but it becomes very important in this study what's driving or motivating the concentration. So at work or at school, I could be driven by I need to make money, or I need to get a job, or some attainment is really useful in driving concentration. But then there's always that wonderful motivation. I love to do it. I love it. I enjoy it. And so that could be a motivator at work or at school. That would be ideal. It's definitely essential when it comes to a spiritual practice, because there's going to be perhaps a little bit more very invisible, very subtle opposition, and I need a love to be able to overcome all of that resistance.
It's interesting you're mentioning about when there is opposition. And so for those who are regular students of the Brahmacarians, January is a very powerful month because it is a month of concentration, solitude, and silence. So I was reading on one of the resources, and it was about this aspect of this really concentrated sense of inner unity with God, the Supreme Soul. And it was really lovely in terms of this description that there needs to be both intensity and concentration, but there also needs to be lightness. And that was interesting. It stayed with me because it was reminding me of what you're talking about. I need to be feeling something. And it reminded me that of these two things, that I would be concentrating on a certain experience, but there would be a significance of it that allows there to be a lightness. And when you were talking about opposition, sometimes when there's opposition, or maybe many times, I'm sure souls have had that feeling like, stop the thinking. It's like this subtle form of rejection that goes on inside. So there isn't that lightness. And so it was, I don't know what your thoughts were in terms of this love, especially when the opposition comes.
So we have been exploring today a few different aspects of love, and one of the main ones, I find anyways, is understanding. So if I'm finding that there's opposition, or rather than let me just push harder, or let me just get upset, or I get disheartened, those are not very fruitful. But let me understand what's going on. And this is assumed, that this is a really critical point, assume that the thing I'm concentrating, I feel, is of benefit, contributes to my well-being. This is really, and again, there's many aspects of well-being for us as a soul and a body. There's the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And what we explore, suggest in Raj Yoga, if we get that seed, and we'll come back to that seed of spiritual, then the others will benefit. But this is really important, that I have confirmed that the thing that I'm focusing on is for my well-being. This isn't assumed in our conversation today. So if I'm not able to focus or concentrate or stay connected to something that actually contributes to my well-being, rather than so often we beat ourselves up, I want to understand, this is being a mother to the self, I want to understand what's going on so that I can figure out a plan to work with that loss of concentration or being overwhelmed by the resistance, identifying that resistance. I have a simple example today, working with a client, and they were very interested we were doing a lot. We do very strange things when we're training, but we were doing inversion, so handstands. And there's many benefits to the handstand, but the reason I like to do it is because it overcomes fear. If the person is capable, it's just there's fear. And if there's fear, then it limits the soul. So we were really just doing it as an exercise to overcome fear. I remember watching them. They're completely capable, but they kept kind of doing weird things, and they just couldn't seem to. And I could tell that they were, when we're afraid, we actually tend to just limit our vision, is what we just keep seeing, and keep those thoughts in our head of what could happen, what's frightening. We really need a shift in vision. So to kind of, in this physical example, to understand what was going on, so we could figure out what program we could introduce. And I could tell, out of that fear, playing it safe, they kept looking in the direction that is the worst direction to look if you're trying to do a handstand. So the only instruction we were giving is look towards the wall, look towards the wall. And sure enough, the moment they did so, I want to, rather than her pushing hard and pushing hard and pushing hard, we acknowledged there was fear, and we looked at how can we address that in a really safe way. And so we were introducing some things, and at the end she was in her handstand. But it's fascinating how we are concentrating on something, but we're concentrating on the opposition rather than solution. And really, if I have a good spiritual practice, it will explain to me what the opposition is, and it will also explain to me how to overcome that without any violence, what the solution is, if it's really robust. And that goes for anything in life.
Would you say that one needs practice? Like, is there perhaps a habit when opposition comes up that we focus on it?
Yeah.
And to have the habit, as you're using that example, she's looking in the wrong direction, but to be looking in the right direction for there to be a proper alignment and balance, etc.
I always, when I first came into the practice, probably the greatest opposition comes in the spiritual practice from ego. And we concentrate a lot and think we're going to kill it and conquer it, and all sorts of interesting, crush it. And one thing that was told to me that was really powerful was be aware of it, observe it, know what the solution to it is, but just the act of acknowledging it, observing it, it actually starts to melt. The moment I fight against it, engage in it, it gets bigger. But if I just observe it, having the solution now available to me from that place, I observe it, it literally just melts. I'm aware it's there. I'm not going to fight it or crush it or kill it. I'm aware it's there, but now I have another option, and that's really important. So when she's doing the handstands, we're aware that there is fear. We're aware of all of this. But now we have solutions. So we're cueing the solution. We're acknowledging the problem, but rather than just concentrating, I can't do it, rather than that. And this is wrong, and that is wrong. Yeah, all those things are going on. But I need to have the solution, which again a robust spiritual practice would give. And I'm going to operate from that solution, observing. I'm not ignoring it. I'm not denying it. I'm not repressing it. I'm aware of it. And just observing it actually diminishes it. But I need to have the other option available to me.
And perhaps in terms of this other option, in terms of observing it, it does remind me when sometimes souls ask, is that then like mindfulness?
I think of it, yes, the mind will have to be full. So I think the word mindfulness is used in a very interesting way. I understand why it's used. It is having to do with that observing, that practice of observing. So it should actually be called being present or observing. Because mindfulness is the mind is full. Of what is the question? The mind, we learn in the Course that the mind, the thoughts in my mind are not shaped by what is going on outside. Thoughts in my mind are shaped by these deep propensities inside. That's what's informing these deep habits. This inner culture is shaping how I think, which is why we can have two people in the same situation and they have different thoughts. It's obviously not the situation. It's things going on inside. So mindfulness suggests that I am filling my mind with something other than the usual stuff. So I can understand it's very important to develop the art, to concentration, to develop the art of being present, of being aware, of observing. This is a really important skill to develop. It's part of mastery, just this concentration. I'm not sure if mindfulness is the best word to use in this particular, in terms of a spiritual practice. I understand why it's used. I'm going to be mindful, but if we look at it, it's the mind is full of what? And this comes back to something I've been thinking about a lot today around concentration. The Hindi term is ekagrata, and what I've been thinking a lot about is ekant priya, which means love for solitude. I feel there's a very deep connection between the two. And when we say solitude, I'm not talking physical isolation. The word ekant actually, I think, gives a big hint, and it has to do with what idea the mind would be filled with. Ekant means one end, to reach that one end. And when I think of one end, I actually think of concentric circles, like a tree trunk, if you cut it, and there's those rings. And I'm getting to the end is actually the very center. Getting to the very center of the self. A very essential, that's what I want my mind filled with. I want to observe from that place. So that's, the concentration is there, and also I'm able to observe what's going on from that concentrated place.
Now I regret I don't know much about mindfulness. I do remember this. So I don't really know if we can really do justice in terms of our questions. But I do remember seeing on one of the bulletin boards at work, and there is a picture, two pictures of somebody's head, and you've got this cloud of their thoughts. One is filled with jumbled amount of basically stress and stressful thoughts, and the other one has the mind showing a nice pretty image of peace, like birds and flowers and a sun or something like that. But there is one thing, so why am I asking about this is actually about the aspect of knowledge. Because mindfulness, if I know much about it, is about, yes, observing your thoughts. But there is a lack of this aspect of eternal aspects of knowledge. How does that play a role in terms of being able to be in this concentrated space to be able to observe things?
I'm just going to give an example, if I can. So as you were sharing, I was thinking about a mind-body class that's very ballet-based. So the bottom line is most of the mind-body classes are very alignment-based. So I love them because I've noticed when the students are in them, without telling them even, they actually go into a natural concentrated state. As they're doing the class, they become very naturally concentrated. What are they concentrating? They're very mindful as well. What are they mindful of? They're very aware of the alignment. They're not just observing. They're observing with an intention to align a certain way, and that's where knowledge comes in. In this case, we're talking about a spiritual alignment. I want to align with that core, ekant, that very timeless sense of the self. So I need to know what that means. I need to have some spiritual knowledge. I'm not just watching, but I'm watching with an intention. And this to me is where mindfulness and concentration can overlap. Just as in the fitness class, yes, they're executing an exercise, but they're concentrating on execute with a particular alignment. And they need to be educated on what they're looking for, what that alignment is, what the mind will be filled with, what they're concentrating on. So they're educated, they're cued, they're told, this is what you're focused on. They start to get this really concentrated vibe to them. It's quite fascinating, but it comes naturally because they now have the information. Because if I'm mindful, I can be extremely distracted easily. But if I have an intention, my mind is filled with this particular intention. I want to focus on spiritual alignment, physical alignment, whatever the case may be. natural concentration, and I'm very mindful or careful, very aware.
Do you feel that, we're using the example of ballet, that these are individuals who are really enjoying what they're doing?
Oh, trust me, it's a handful that come in. So it's a very, and I respect that, certainly, you know. They are interested in doing this. They were not forced at gunpoint to come into that room. They chose voluntarily. They enjoy it. The client I was with earlier today, it was one-on-one. It was all ballet, pretty much. And we kept looking out on the weight floor saying, they must just wonder what we're doing, you know, like, why are they doing this? What's going on? But we were both enjoying ourselves so much, but the concentration was intense, but very natural. We had an understanding, the two of us, of what we're trying to align with, what we're trying to do. So it comes so, and you see this come very naturally. My heart goes out when we're trying to force concentration without the proper supports. We just get upset, and I hear people say, I can't concentrate, and that's not true. Everyone can concentrate. We do it all the time. The question is, am I concentrating on what's contributing to well-being? We have the skill, but we need to focus it on what contributes, and we need to somehow create a relationship, an enjoyable relationship with that intention or that objective. And that's the piece that's super important. When there is love or a sense of attainment, when that's understood, concentration comes very easily. But if it's not, if it's shame or should or guilt or heaviness or comparing, then yeah, I wouldn't be able to concentrate either.
We know that spirituality is not black and white. There's gray zones, and I mean gray zones in the sense that there could be a soul who has that love for truth. But they also, for those who have not taken Raja Yoga, we do really explore and experiment and realize that as souls we've taken rebirth. So we have old habits. So what is, then there's a possibility that there is that love, really want to concentrate, and yet there is old habits of, you know, putting on the brakes on the mind and maybe even using the knowledge, not even realizing, even though you love it, you're using it in a way that kind of is a bit militant.
And, you know, this is why we really have to, we're given lots of signs and signals of when we're moving along in a healthy way, and we really want to increase our understanding. We say we need to study every day, the intention being that I can keep increasing this understanding of the self. This is a university where the subject matter is the self, which means I am studying so I can keep increasing, removing those areas of deception or blind spot that we all have, so I can keep, and the more understanding I have, the less violence I will have with the self, the more successful, the moment I understand. This is something that clients constantly are crying out for. They're doing something and they keep saying, why isn't this working? Why can't I do it? And they finally look at me and say, give me a cue. Tell me what to do. Tell me where to focus. They're waiting for that understanding. They're very aware, you know, but they're blind to what exactly am I doing wrong, that it's not working. And so that's what we do. We watch and we try and develop that understanding. This is a limited example. Then they know where to focus, and they're very motivated. And slowly as they work with that, then they get some results.
Now, I know you've been sharing about this aspect of love and how it's connected to this aspect of concentration. And then still, though, I remember learning the first few days of the Raja Yoga course and just practicing while I'm actually driving, and someone says, don't do that, you're going to crash. Right. So in terms of concentration, you know, because we may have, again, still these deep habitual ideas about it, is it possible to concentrate the way you're talking about and still actually be able to perform actions, interactions, and what is thwarting them?
No, it's such a good point. I mean, again, I want to concentrate on something, so I have to make sure I made the right choice. I concentrate on something that's improving my well-being. So ideally, I'm concentrating on something that actually enhances how I operate. not is exclusive to operating, but actually enhances how I operate. So I have to choose properly, and this is where, again, when we're talking mindfulness concentration, I'm using different definitions, but I want to concentrate on something, so when I'm in that, what many call meditative, but we just call aware state, very awake state, spiritually awake state, driving, everything is enhanced. If I'm in that awake state, it is not exclusive to, it's meant to be integrated into. If I've chosen well what I'm focusing on, it should actually increase my well-being.
Sometimes, especially students in the Raji, where they say they experience headaches.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound like the kind of love you're talking about.
Yeah. So I'll just give you a really simple example. Today we had the client on an unstable surface called a Bosu trainer. It's a very wobbly surface, flat side up. And they were on one leg, and they're doing these ballet things on one leg, and they'd suddenly get off and say, my foot's cramping. Now, your core is not in your foot. So they weren't using their core. They were trying to grip with their toes, and so they got pain in their foot. They're saying, I'm balancing. I'm like, no, if you were balancing. So although we're saying I'm balancing, I'm not using the right method to balance, so I have pain. Although I'm sitting and saying I'm meditating, I'm not using the right method, so I land up with pain. Thank goodness the pain came, because it's a loyal indicator that I'm not using the right method. So it's great, because I could go along for a very long time with the wrong method. So it's good the pain came. You know, I had the headache or whatever, or a cramping foot in this example. She got off, we reset, we discussed what needed to happen, so that it could be the right method. So if I'm experiencing the headaches, because we do have, you suggested rebirth, we have different ideas and habits of approaching things that, again, may not contribute to well-being. So if I'm getting headaches, it's like, okay, I need to understand, again, what's going on, because our idea, I know when people hear concentration, it's like, gird down, I'm getting a headache just doing that.
Sometimes it doesn't look appealing like that. That looks like meditation.
But another idea we have of concentration is when we see, when we see a beautiful scene, when we go to the museum and there's a beautiful painting, and I just stand there and I just love looking at it. It's a very enjoyable experience. I'm concentrating on it. We probably wouldn't use that word, but it has my complete attention. But it's very enjoyable. It's effortless. Again, because there's that love, right? So I need to check if I've got the right method going on. And when we hear certain words, this is part of our understanding, they can trigger old ideas. So if I hear concentration, immediately it might completely not interest me because I have old ideas around it. Even though we are all doing it, we have, in this context of meditation, we might have a specific idea of what it's supposed to be like, what it feels like. I hear people, when they ask, you meditate for an hour? How can you concentrate for an hour? So that just sounds painful. So I really need to check my understanding and my method around these things.
And I'm going to try to keep this in very pedestrian language, so for those who haven't taken the course, so they can understand. We had a morning class, and there was something that you shared that I feel is very relevant to this conversation, is that we are really experimenting with eternal truths. And has that experience of the truth really come alive for me? Has it become something that I can actually really feel that it actually changes my perspective of things that happen? And I guess I was thinking about that piece in terms of if that is really a part of the concentration, because let's say you were talking about peace, we were using that example, and I might be having a feeling about it. But is it possible that I haven't really bought into it? That's not really, and like that, I don't really feel that's my true nature. But that would only be revealed when there's suddenly a storm inside that's creating peacelessness.
Yeah, if there is definitely, we talked about the opposition. And if there are, we sometimes use the image of the iceberg on the surface. Okay, yes, I'm going for this, but if underneath there's still, I don't really believe this, I don't really buy into it, I don't think I can do it, I don't know what I'm doing. If there's any of those kinds of attitudes going on underneath, they obviously will sabotage the whole endeavor. Even though in the conscious level, I'm like, oh yes, no, I'm good, I'm giving it my all, I'm working so hard. But underneath, there's all these self-sabotage, almost these other ideas or attitudes that are, I just doubt myself, or I don't believe it, or I'm not sure. That's really, I call it traveling with a handbrake on. It's really going to create a lot of obstacles in being able to cooperate with that concentration.
So would you say that there needs to be, I'm not sure what the word is, but there needs to be times in my study that I am actually realizing the truth for concentration to really, for this whole package, I suppose you can say, of Raja Yoga.
Yeah, and it's lovely. It actually suggests that there's a bridge to a bridge to a bridge. So the ultimate bridge is I'm able to focus on this experience of being a soul and my relationship with Supreme Soul. That's my ultimate. But maybe I need to build a bridge to that. And maybe I need to build a bridge to that bridge. And a bridge to, this is where understanding. So it needs to, maybe I need to have a conversation. And you'll notice natural concentration because it's so, again, nurturing to the self. Maybe I have a concentration of, do I believe this? Is it real to me? And not feel bad. It's actually quite liberating to just have an honest conversation with the self. Do I believe it? Well, let's just walk through this. What do I believe? What do I feel is most important in life to have? And you'll have it'll be such a natural. You won't even call it meditation. It'll be so natural, even though it's what you're doing. You're having a reflection. So I just need to back up a little bit, create a bridge to that bridge until I arrive. Because by the time I arrive at the destination, I'll be so on board because I've done this legwork of really seeing, is the heart in this? Am I completely committed to this? Am I aligned with it? So to take the time to just, really have honest kind of conversations with the self, be clear. This is being a mother again to the self, not violent, but very understanding. Let's talk about it. I think that's always our advice to someone if they're troubled by something or someone. It's like, well, see if you can talk about it. So have the talk with yourself. What's going on inside?
It's interesting how we have a habit of doing things without questioning, and it can be quite subtle too. It's just like, I know many probably have the experience where you're driving and you can go to your destination and you don't even remember actually driving there because it's just so routine. And I was realizing that can happen inside. You may be loving this study, loving different aspects, but there might be some old habits that are just sort of happening without question.
Absolutely. It's so refreshing. We can easily fall into habits or routine and sort of get stuck and not realize that there are these little inhibitions inside that have never been addressed, and so we don't really move any further forward. And I guess after a while we start to lose a little steam and suddenly saying, wow, I can't concentrate the way I used to, and not realizing that these little inhibitions have actually been undermining me in some way.
Thank you, Judy. I may just pause right now. For those who are on Instagram or YouTube or on Zoom, if you have any questions, you're welcome. You're welcome to type in the chat box. I think they're all in that area. If you have any questions for those on YouTube or Instagram, you're welcome to type in the chat box. For those on Zoom, you can type in the chat box or you can unmute yourself. We'll just pause for a moment in case.
Very concentrated.
Go ahead, Hema, if you have a question.
Or anything to share.
Yeah, or anything.
Yeah, no. So what I was thinking that that is correct. Like sometimes our past sanskars as well play a major role in having a proper concentration and all. But what I've been observing lately, that our day-to-day activities and what is of my interest as of now, that also hinder. That's also hindrance in my concentration. If that's what I've been seeing, that if I have a very nice, peaceful, and not dragging day a day before, then my morning meditation quality is very, very different. Even the quality of my sleep is good, and such, and thus the meditation quality of meditation is good because concentration is good as well, right? So what was of my interest yesterday, what was my of interest a day before, so that also um, contribute a lot to the quality of my concentration.
That's such a good point, Hema. I agree that, we sort of, again, it's demanding a lot of ourselves. Okay, I'm going to sit down now and concentrate. But for the other 23 hours of the day, I was all over the place, right? And it is something, back to that, what I'm concentrating on should be able to integrate into my day-to-day life. And it is something that I enjoy practicing, is as I go through the day to check in and see, what am I focusing on? Is it just when I'm in seated meditation that this is of interest to me? Again, if I've chosen wisely, this should be something that I focus on to increase my well-being, and that's 24/7 if I've chosen wisely. So it's something I can concentrate on as I go through the day, and that keeps building it. Absolutely. It's a really good point.
That's also like the way I think, like there could be distractions in meditation, but that's where I think I use mindfulness, that where my mind is running around, right? So that I can bring it back to the track. So that's how I interpret mindfulness. It's a different, right? Because we heard same word, but we can interpret in a different way. And then, so that's how I use I use mindfulness, that where my mind is running around and how can I bring it back on the track. So yeah, but I mean, it could be sometimes it takes little longer if I had a lot of distraction a day before.
Yeah, I've heard the phrase "mind your mind." To really,
it's be aware, like what your mind is thinking about, right? So, and when we are aware, we cannot think anything west, or we cannot think anything negative, because we know that in the right awareness, I cannot do anything wrong, right? So that's how I use mindfulness, that if anything is going on which is of not any use, I just start paying attention that where mind is going, and that's how I use mindfulness, and it's helping actually.
Very nice.
I do feel that Hema's question is very much connected to just a part of what we're talking about. And the next question I had was, and I do think it's connected, and I hope it's not a duplication of the question. It was, again, about this class that I was reading. And about this aspect of, didn't use the word concentration, but I do feel it is what it is. But that if there was concentration, they were talking about light and lightness. But then they also were sharing that there would be, and maybe it was just used in another way, there would be an easy nature, but there would also be the capacity to tolerate, which I found very interesting. That if you could share a little bit about what tolerating means, because it's very relevant to concentration, very relevant to opposition, that because another word we see in a day-to-day life, we use the word tolerate, and it's like girding down, and it's like, it certainly doesn't, it was quite interesting, easy-natured and tolerance.
Yeah. So I don't usually encourage this, but we're going to try it now as an experiment. Those listening, I want you to internally, and again, don't stay there too long, but take a moment to just consider, reflect on what intolerance feels like, when you feel like you're not able to tolerate something, when something's really bothering you, what that feels like. I know we don't like it, so don't stay there too long. Come out. So it's a feeling.
It almost feels like tolerance if you use it the wrong way.
So it's things bother you. It's a feeling of feeling bothered, impatient, irritated, you want to strike out, whatever, you want to fix, you want to control, whatever. You know what that feels like. So imagine a state where you don't have those feelings. You might be in what others are observing as aversive or difficult, but it's still there, but you don't have those feelings. So if I can get in the right alignment, you can put me in, and I don't have those feelings. So this is something, again, that we were just talking about this morning, that I noticed with dancers. And we talk physically about people having different tolerance levels. And dancers, ballet dancers, have notoriously high levels of tolerance. They can tolerate incredible pain. And you probably wouldn't know it because they always look like nothing's going on. But, I've known of them going on there with appendicitis. I mean, it's crazy, their capacity to tolerate. They've got injuries, they're taped up, their feet are bleeding. You don't want to. I remember once seeing the toes of a well-known Chelsea Kirkland, I think, a well-known ballet dancer, and it looks like they've been beaten. They were just a mess, her toes. So, and they're just dancing on these all the time, and just smiling away. And what's going on? They feel things differently. Why? Why do dancers feel things differently? It has to do with the alignment of their consciousness. They are deeply aligned with the consciousness, I am a dancer. And it's amazing. It's a bit like when I watch a mother walking down the street with 5 grocery bags and they're holding one toddler and the other one's dragging. And I just how do they do it? They have the consciousness, I am a mother. And it shapes how we feel. So what if my consciousness, this way I identify myself, what if it's aligned with the truth? How would that shape my feelings? If it's aligned with the truth, which is very eternal, unlimited, incredibly accommodating, how would that naturally... Obviously, this can't be an intellectual exercise. I really would have had to go there, just like the mother really goes there, the dancer really goes there. It changes how they feel things. If I align my consciousness with the truth, yes, it will make me very easy, non-reactive in situations, and able to hold so much that others feel is intolerable. It changes how I experience things, feel things. That's the power of consciousness.
Is that then what you mean by I need to choose carefully what I'm going to be concentrating on?
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's consciousness is, when we say it can't to reach the end of, it is it. It's the end point of how deep we can go, is consciousness, the very way I identify myself. If I identify myself as unworthy, if I identify myself as a victim, and this could be happening subconsciously, it will definitely affect what I concentrate on. And it will definitely affect my capacity to concentrate. So I have to be very careful what I align my sense of consciousness with.
I'm very mindful of the time. I know we also started late with some technical issues. Mm-hmm. But when you were mentioning about intellectual, this cannot be intellectual. Mm. And I think that when it comes to intellect, mind, consciousness, it can be quite abstract for individuals in terms of, when I say abstract, I mean like that they can sense what's happening. Kind of like for those who are in physical fitness. For some, they say, okay, just bring up a term, something about the core. Just some phrase.
Transverse abdominis?
She's talking about transverse abdominis. So make sure your transverse abdominis is on. I'm not even saying it properly. But some mention about just start activate your core. Like you assume that individuals know what's going on. Mm-hmm. They can feel what's happening, and I feel that way as well when it comes to can one tell? Can they feel? When it's intellectual, can they feel? Because whether it's intellectual or whether it's reality, you're still using thoughts. Yeah.
Hema told a story this morning that reminded me of another story. and I always enjoy this. So there's a very well-known performer, probably known around the world, almost, who goes by the name Beyonce. So if you know who this is, Beyonce, there was an incident where she was doing choreography for one of her videos, and she was going through so many choreographers. She wanted just a certain feel on the choreography, and all these great choreographers were coming through, and it just wasn't hitting it for her. And so she must have been watching. She filed it away. She'd seen a video a while ago, and she filed it away, and she remembered, oh yeah, there were these two boys that were doing this funny African dance in a video somewhere on YouTube. Let's go find those two boys. Bring them in. They can teach me what they're doing. So they flew these two, they found them, flew them in.
Some small town.
Some village and somewhere. Flew them in, and they said, I'm Beyonce. They had no idea who she was. None. Now you could intellectually say, okay, I'm about to meet Beyonce and I'm going to play it cool. I'm going to pretend I don't know who she is. But inside, there's still that feeling, whoa, I'm meeting Beyonce. That's intellectual. When it's the real thing, it's those two boys. They had no idea who she was. They weren't faking it. You could see it. They're like, I'm sorry, who are you? Oh, she says, I'm Beyonce. Okay. So anyways, here's the thing that we do. Like, it was fascinating that's the real deal. I can try to fake it. I could intellectually, conceptually, well, this is what I would be like, but inside I'm still, this is why we say feeling. Feelings aren't fake. Vibration is not fake. I can sort of conceptually, well, this is what I would be like, how I would behave if I was, acting really cool.
So you're still crafting a certain
But
behavior.
inside, I'm still feeling, whoa, this is Beyonce. Whereas with these two boys, hi, I'm Joe. It's as if they introduced them to whoever. Nothing. Absolutely. These boys were not fake. It was the real deal. So, reality. When I say align with the truth, it will change how I feel in a natural way. I won't have to think my way into those feelings. I won't have to intellectualize my way into it. It will be so natural. So when we say you are a soul, a spiritual being, not physical, I and mine is changed. You are a soul, you are eternal, you're a traveler through time. Interesting ideas. Are they reality? If they were, they would change how you feel. Naturally. Wouldn't have to think my way into all of these. And I'll just end with we're so off track now. I've shared many times this little, I don't know what to call it, this little skit, I'm not sure what to call it, on the life of Jesus Christ, BBC production, beautifully done, and very, very well done. And it's just a tiny little snippet, a scene. Pontius had sent a couple of his bodyguards to, Christ was giving some problems to Pontius, so he was causing some difficulty in his little community. So he sent a couple of henchmen to go find him, rough him up a bit, and bring him in for questioning. And of course, the Christ soul, the actor playing this Jesus Christ, was brilliant, because you could see that the awareness of this being, Jesus Christ, was the embodiment of brotherly love. He was totally ignorant of anything. It wasn't that he was thinking I should love everyone and it's the right thing to do and I should be... He literally was incapable of hating. In this depiction, incapable. So, and it was in the eyes, like it was so well done. So, you see the two henchmen rough him up a bit, bring him in for questioning. He's in front of Pontius, and Pontius is looking at him, trying to understand this person, Jesus Christ, and he says, "You must be very angry at me." And Jesus Christ is looking at him, the actor, playing it, looking and saying, like literally, it was as innocent and pure. He's like, "Angry at you? Why would I be angry at you?" He said, "Because I've beat you up and brought you in for questioning?" He said, but you didn't do that. You sent these 2 men to go do that. I said, oh, then you must be very angry at these 2 men. And he looks at them so sweetly and says, no, why would I be angry at them? Because they beat you up. But they were just doing what you asked them to do. Like it was just so like he was incapable. He did not understand. Like there was no, the feelings, the heart was just so pure. Because you knew the awareness of that soul was so pure, so aligned with brotherly love. Like that was his reality. He wasn't having to think, oh, I should be very loving, and there's a limit to how loving, and I need boundaries, and like none of that. He was incapable of anything else, and that, I think, the possibility of that, that I could be equally loving to every being, compassionate to every being, loving to the self, caring, the possibility of that is sufficient motivation for me to concentrate on the method that could get me there. And that's what we want to do, is really appreciate what that objective is, so I can focus on the aim. And that's the whole story of Arjuna the archer. Such a high level of concentration because he was so pulled by what could be achieved through that concentration. If it makes me a more caring, kinder human being, I'm in. I'm very motivated to concentrate on that method.
Well, thank you, Judy. Sometimes I wonder if we always have to keep going back to the drawing board.
Absolutely.
Start from square one again and
keep
again.
Reminding ourselves, yeah.
Well, thank you for those who joined with us. We will have a little reflection right now.
I go inside into the vault of my inner world where I keep the things that are most precious to me. They're not physical things. Those I keep in a vault outside. The vault inside of the heart, I keep those invisible, non-physical, spiritual things, those qualities most precious to me. I go into the vault of the heart and I pick just one jewel, one thing that's very precious, one quality that is so important to me for quality of life. It might be forgiveness, it might be patience, it might be love, it might be peace, joy. Just taking a moment to reflect on just one of those jewels in the vault of my inner world that is so dear to me, that when I see this quality demonstrated by someone else, it actually can move me to tears. It's that precious. I bring that in front of my inner eye and take a moment to really feel it. That I would love to live my life through the lens of this quality. That deep love with that objective, that connection, relationship to that objective. I want to embody that quality, even in day-to-day life, not random acts, but a way of life. That's where concentration begins. If I have the method to reach that objective, I am so deeply motivated to stay loyal to that method. And the method is simply to realize the true self. You are that quality. We just keep forgetting. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. And thank you for those who joined us on Zoom, on YouTube, on Instagram. A warm reminder that we have World Meditation Hour tomorrow, Sunday, January 16th. And so that will be streaming on the YouTube channel, BK Calgary YouTube channel. Otherwise, you're welcome to visit our center's website to find out about upcoming sessions. I'm not sure if there's anything specific, Judy. Not at all. All right. Take good care. Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Yeah.